I'm not happy. Not one bit. Hey, what's up you guys, The Curious Owl here, and today I'm going to be sharing my rant, as opposed to really a review, of Coral and Bone by Tiffany Daune. This is the first novel in the Siren Chronicles series, and I have some thoughts that are not positive in the slightest. I really did not like this book at all. This was my February TBR pick, and I finished it in March because unfortunately I had run out of time in February because of all the readathons I had done. But even though I took some time in March to read it, I don't think it really helped this book at all. So this book is even really hard to describe what the hell goes on in it, because it seems like from the very beginning you are floundering around trying to understand what the hell is even going on for your main character. But let me try to explain it in the best way possible. So the story focuses mostly on our character named Halon, who is a normal, fairly normal at least, teenage girl who moves back to a city that she's grown up in with her mom. Her mom's boyfriend, I don't even really know, but he was her dad's best friend. And this girl who's not even really her dad's best friend's daughter. Like, there's never really any clear relationship for two of these characters. But the reason they come back is because obviously Halon has been going through some hard times, and they think that going back to some place that she is familiar with might be better. But unfortunately for her, the place that they go back to is actually the place of her father's disappearance and possible death. And since then, she's had a hard time figuring out, what happened to him, and having a hard time still grieving with that. Along with that, she keeps having some very strange visions and dreams of this mysterious boy she's never met, and is constantly hearing things that nobody else is able to hear. And then one night, when she and her roommate, stepsister, I don't even know what you want to call her, Tage, are at home, a mysterious boy comes up that tries to attack them. And so the only way they can escape is to run out the back door onto the beach and jump into the water, of all places, when it's storming. From there, Halon is then grabbed by some magical being of some sort and dragged below the waters to this realm called Elysia, which is filled with sirens. Now, the siren aspect is weird because the sirens sound more like mermaids, because in contemporary culture, sirens are usually the ones that are the bad guys. But in this story, the sirens are the good guys, mermaids are the bad guys, I think, but there's some mermaids that are good. There's everything's all jumbled up. I don't even understand what the fuck's going on. While she's in Elysia, or Elysia, I don't know exactly how you want to call it, Halon finds out some really dark secrets about who she is and her family, and finds out that basically she is what's called a blue moon siren, where she has this incredible power and is able to take down this awful siren who is the most evil guy on the face of the earth, and she has to destroy him, otherwise he will destroy all three realms within the world. Let me start off by saying this. I think the idea of the story and the idea of the world were both really interesting. I think that by themselves, those two things were really interesting for the story. The execution, though, is abysmal, and looks like it was a first draft that was thrown together and nobody edited it. It seriously looks like a piece of garbage. First chapter is basically, we find out about who Halon is and her parents and Tage, and then all of a sudden she's dragged under the water. What? That seems to be something more like what I would expect from a third chapter, maybe, with her falling down and going and getting trapped inside this realm, but no, that's the first chapter. Also, half of this novel is in the perspective of Tage, which I think honestly was unnecessary. I don't really care much about Tage. I didn't really like her much as a character. I didn't see much of a point to her, and especially towards the end you realize that there really was no point to her in the first place, so I didn't really see any reason to have her perspective in any of the story. It would have been better if it was just Halon's. Also, I have a problem with info dumping, okay? Info dumping is something that's really hard to avoid in a lot of times, but this had some of the worst info dumping I think there could have ever been, because the main character knows nothing. And so for one, it's either nobody tells her a goddamn thing about what's going on, or they tell her things, but they take 5 fucking pages to talk about several different things all at the same time. Now, if you're gonna do info dumping, I think you need to do info dumping that makes the most sense. Doing one thing at a time, not 50 million things at a time that takes up 5 pages. If you're gonna do info dumping, you need to do it in the way that makes the most sense by establishing the background first at one point in the story, and then throughout the story have other places that pertain to the story as well that are important, but only important to the particular moment in time. So for instance, if you have a main character who knows nothing about what's going on, you can have the mentor character or whoever it is that is telling her all this information about the world first and kind of some of the inner workings of it as you can, and then tell more little things as you go on as they explore the world. Then later on, if there's a bad guy that's involved, then the mentor character or character that's telling the information can then tell about them, that specific person, and what they're doing and why they were doing this and everything about them. And this book just did none of that. It basically just took 5 pages each time to talk about 50 million different things, and oh, it was just annoying. Also, there is no real clear descriptions of any of the realms, except that one's on fire, and the other one's underwater, and then there's Earth. That's it. Also, the sirens and mermaids ideas were way too similar because, like I said earlier, it seemed that the sirens were more of the good guys, the mermaids were more of the bad guys, which is kind of flip-flopped from my general knowledge of what has been told to me in the past about these mystical creatures. But they still, even at that point, seemed way too similar and interchangeable, which I think, when I think sirens and mermaids are slightly different, but they didn't seem that way in this book. And then Halon is probably one of the worst main characters of all time. She's incredibly whiny. She's very, woe is me, everyone lied to me, all this stuff, when I'm like, yeah, everyone lied to you to try to fucking protect you. Why can't you understand that and get that through your very, very apparently thick skull? Also, one of my most hated tropes is in this book, and many of you will know it is insta-love. And in the end, the insta-love kind of makes sense based on what you find out about the romantic interest and Halon, but I still would have liked for it to be more of a slow burn as opposed to an insta-love. Like, I like the idea of these two characters together, and I understand the reasoning why they were together in the first place, which kind of is one of the more redeeming qualities, is that you kind of understand why these two characters are together and what their relationship is to each other. But I kind of wish it was more of a slow burn, because I think that based on their first interactions and kind of the way that they had you know, really kind of gone back and forth for a while, it would have made more sense to make it more of a slow burn and kind of maybe like, not quite enemies to lovers trope, but more of like a disliked to, okay, you're not that unattractive to me anymore kind of thing. Now, Tage, on the other hand, I do think that she was interesting in some aspects, but I think the biggest reason why I didn't like her is because I didn't know much about her. All you know about Tage basically throughout the entirety of the book is that her parents are dead and somehow she's supposed to protect Halon. She has nothing else going for her. You don't know really much about her at all, and I would have liked to have known more about her so that I could have possibly liked her more. I will say some of the redeeming factors within this, like I said, were the interesting like inklings of the world and the overall premise of the story, and also some of the humor that was going on within the characters themselves. Like, there was some pretty good banter here and there, but overall, I felt like it was just abysmal. It seriously felt like a first draft that had not been passed through by anybody and was just sent to publish, and nobody looked at it a second time, and it wasn't interesting enough for me to continue with the series. I felt like I just was trudging through it, and to be completely honest, I feel like I was way, way more confused than anything else. I felt more confused going into it every time than I was when I left the book at every time I left the book. With all that said, I basically gave Coral and Bone a 2 out of 5 stars because there were some redeeming things within it, but overall it was just a shit show. I really don't like this. I will not be continuing with the series. I have no interest in it. If you guys did enjoy this video, please do give it a big thumbs up, and if you're not already and you'd like to be, hit the button down below and subscribe to become an owlet in our flock, and I will see all of you guys in my next video. Bye guys!